Fire Radio.
Hey everybody, it's Rob, National Fire Radio with Frontline Mindset. We are joined here today, Dr. Peter Salerno, previous guest of the podcast, not on this one here. This is our new Frontline Mindset, but Peter reached out to me a couple days ago via text, actually probably a few weeks ago at this point, and brought up some good points. And one of them was kind of finding the right fit for a mental health professional. Like, you've come to this crossroad where you're going to seek some help, but where do you go from there? And if like many people, this can become very overwhelming. So there's a lot of choices out there, and certainly this is one of those times where Google will work against you because you can become quickly overwhelmed with options. But yeah, I'm excited to talk to Peter about this today. So Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me again.
So let's really quickly, for those who don't know who you are, who might be tuning in for the first time, let's just give everybody a quick background, if you don't mind, on who you are and how we've kind of connected here.
Yeah. So I'm a psychotherapist. I live in California, Southern California. I come from a firefighter family. My dad is a retired fire captain. My brother is still currently a firefighter and union president of his department. And so I am definitely well-versed in the, personal aspects of what it's like to be living and growing up among first responders. And my career and the fire service or first responders in general just kind of intersected. I started doing a lot of trauma work, and that kind of led me to write a couple of books that I found would be helpful for first responders. Very user-friendly, reader-friendly books, kind of an introduction to exposure to trauma on duty and how that affects life off duty, and increasing awareness, mental health awareness, because there is I'm sure you would agree, there's an epidemic of all kinds of things, suicide and just coping poorly and tragedy related to the job. So, and I think you just reached out to me last year. You stumbled upon my book, or somebody sent it to you, or something like that. So
yeah, fit for off duty, and it actually made the rounds of the firehouse. People picked it up and read it, and there was a lot of light bulb moments that were happening, and that's really what kind of brought us together, is to have a discussion about that book. I highly recommend everybody go back if you haven't listened to that episode and give that one a go as well. So yeah. You've kind of since we've had a conversation about this, and this conversation is about mindset, or the podcast rather is about mindset. What are some of the things that you've been getting some feedback on as maybe a potential hurdle that firefighters and whatnot have been having when it comes to they make that decision? What are they up against?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest challenges is there's still the stigma associated with mental health, and nobody's fault, I guess. It's just part of the culture, is you take care of yourself. You're the ones who do the helping. You don't need the help. So, but one of the hurdles is now it's been pretty accepted that there's these services. Some departments offer services. They have contracts with agencies. They have contracts. They do peer support type of stuff now. So it's not completely unheard of that somebody who's overly stressed out might be seeking mental health support. The problem that I'm noticing is a lot of people are like, well, I've gone a couple times. It didn't really seem like it was a good fit, or I showed up and I really didn't know what to expect, and nothing's really changed. So now what? So I think originally when I first wrote the book, it was sort of to get people in the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just give it a shot. Now they're like, well, I did, and I don't know if that was what I was supposed to experience. So I think it's a good idea for as far as mindset and awareness to help people understand, like, therapy is not a one size fits all. you are going to get a drastically different experience from clinician to clinician. So you kind of need to know what to look for in the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to get um, disappointed, discouraged. You're going to waste your own time. You're going to waste some money, and it might just turn into this new stigma where, well, it just doesn't help. I didn't get the help I needed. That's why I didn't want to go in the first place, kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before to other firefighters and first responders who I've talked to, like finding somebody, a therapist, mental health professional, it's like a good pair of boots or a good pair of running shoes that are broken in, or that just feel comfortable on your feet. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you have intuition. You're going to know that something's not a good fit. And if it's not, like, you can find somebody else, because that's one, completely acceptable to do. Like, there's no sense in, I don't like to hang out with toxic people, so I'm not saying that person would be toxic, but like,
Yeah.
If it's not working for you. I think I've had probably 7 or 8 therapists throughout my professional career, not including all the fun trauma that my parents put me through. So, but it's I think right before the pandemic, there was somebody who just politically were so at odds with my own personal beliefs, and it came up in therapy, that I ended the relationship with the therapist, because I have to be able to be 100% myself with no judgment.
Absolutely.
And like,
that's
that person,
it's a red flag right there.
Yeah. So, and there was no, like, and I was not sure, because I searched this person out. Like, it took me a minute, but then the minute that I made that decision and I said out loud, I'm not going back to this person ever again, a weight got lifted off my chest. And then I found, like, another door opened, and I went out and got that opportunity and got somebody else to speak to, which was a huge help.
And I would highly recommend, vetting therapists, shopping around, almost doing like an interview process, because everybody, therapists are human beings. They come from different backgrounds, and it's really not like, I think healthcare in general, you can get this idea that like if you go to an internal medicine doctor, for example, they have a certain skill set that you could pretty much guarantee you're going to get mostly the same, feedback. If you're going in for a cough or a cold or a sinus infection or something like that, they'll either send you to a specialist or put you on a medication, and you don't have to worry about their background or their personal history,
Right.
Therapy is much different. Like, personal history, the reason why we get into this profession in the first place, it all makes a difference. Whether people want to admit it or not, it's brought into the room. And so you really do have to rely on your intuition when it comes to, sitting down with somebody, and you have to feel like you can be, 100% transparent. It should feel very safe. It should feel very inviting. No red flags should pop up. So I think there are some things that you can look for too. And nowadays, the convenience of online therapy, that's definitely a useful tool. At the same time, though, I would say it's almost like a lot of people have been treating finding a therapist like they treat dating apps. You get like this picture and this little profile snippet, and you think, oh, this is it, right? So you have to do some sifting through, and there's some trial and error involved before you find, a really good fit. And there's some shortcuts I can share on what to look for, like in a profile, so that you know really what you're getting yourself into. So I would say, for example, whether you're going to therapy for personal issues, for relationship issues, for issues with family or children, issues related to, stress, you definitely want to look for, as a firefighter, somebody who specializes in trauma treatment. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to therapy for, healing from trauma, but you want someone who has the background on, have they studied, the nervous system? Have they studied aspects of, threat responses? because those are things that a therapist for a firefighter would need to know. And not every therapist is trained the same way. So there can be huge chunks or gaps in what people specialize in. We have something called a scope of practice, but that's different than a scope of competency.
Yeah. And the other thing too is each one of these are a little bit of a different thing. So it's almost for the firefighters, it's like you're performing your own size up on what you're seeking the help for. Like we approach a high-rise building differently than we approach a single-family dwelling versus a 4-story, multiple occupied dwelling that's wood frame construction, right? So like all these things, I think if I'm looking for something for my spouse, that's a very specific area to get into. So looking for somebody with this that's a trauma or an expert in trauma or has exposure to it is huge, because it's just like you're going to want to make sure you're selecting the right tool for the right job.
Right. And honestly, a lot of firefighters come in and they'll tell me before they've, had like an evaluation, I'm depressed, or I have an anxiety disorder, or I think I'm bipolar. And, that's all well and good. You could do some research, maybe find some symptoms that align with how you're feeling. But most of the time, when people come in with this preconceived notion of what's going on with them, it's usually inaccurate. And so a lot of things look similar too. So for example, PTSD can look like ADHD. It can look like major depressive disorder. It can look like, to a certain degree, bipolar disorder. So I think too, somebody who's well-versed in trauma therapy is going to, alleviate some of this, this fear that you have some sort of a mental illness, right? Rather than something that's just been environmentally caused due to the nature of your work. So a lot of peace of mind too, when you just go to somebody who kind of knows how to deal with this special population of firefighters.
I often think of I'm having a normal reaction to a very abnormal situation in acute stress environments, traumatic events like go to a bad car accident. We have, pediatric patients who have negative outcomes, line of duty deaths, things like that, right? So it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And now we're dealing with it down the road, flashbacks, whatever the case might be.
Right.
But then I approach it I go into speaking with somebody from mental health and, hey, I'm depressed. And I would relate it to the fire service of, we show up into a front of a building and we've all heard this report before, the building's fully involved. Well, the fully involved definition is fire is in every room. Like the building literally is fully involved. But what we see is fire showing from the front. Maybe it's the outside exterior siding on fire, and we start putting water and we realize the whole back of the house and the rest of the house is still very much intact. But that first thing that we see is a wall of flames, and it's very easy for an incident commander to say, or an arriving officer to say fully involved, or maybe a cop. But I've had police officers like saying fully involved. We just got fire out of 2 windows. The building's not fully involved, but that mental health professional is going to sift through what we're going through and be like, hey, like you may have said this was depression, but really what it is you're having normal reaction to an abnormal situation, and it's causing these side effects. Absolutely. And it's just a good way to kind of like break this down so that we're not already behind the ball. Because like if I walk into a therapist with the mindset that I'm already depressed and I have this, mental health diagnoses that I've given myself, I'm not really in a good spot to make good decisions and really fully accept what's the solution to the problem that I'm having, right?
Yeah. And another issue with that is if you're going to, let's say, a cognitive behavioral therapist who specializes in depression, their lens, they're going to try to validate your self-diagnosis because that's
Right.
how their mind works. So it's not necessarily that they're wrong, or that they're not good at their job, but they might not be, the person that you should be sitting with, because they're going to have this sort of, educational training bias, if you will. So, and if you go in and say, I'm fatigued, I'm lacking in motivation, I don't enjoy the things I used to enjoy. They could say, well, yeah, I mean, that's major depression. It's also trauma and stress, So you don't want to go to the wrong, um, the wrong place, um, because you might get validated, and then you have this belief that you have something that you really don't have, and it's going to be treated improperly, and things aren't going to get better. So
Yeah. What are some other pitfalls that we find when we're, like I think in our conversation you said you've had some patients come back and they're like, yeah, like this was, I thought XYZ was going to happen, and
mhm.
you know it didn't. What are some of the other things that we can kind of educate about when it comes to getting yourself in the mindset of approaching this mental health professional
Yeah.
and seeking that help?
So it's not a guarantee that you're going to feel better after your first, second, or third session. So I would say don't mistake that as not getting good quality care. I mean, when you think about it, if you've if you're doing something new, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, and so you're not going to get immediate results. And then whether that's like even working out at the gym or starting a new diet or whatever, trying to learn something new, it's not going to feel like it's really um, everything's aligning perfectly, the first or second time. I will say though, you should feel comfortable and safe enough with the person that you're sitting across from, uh, pretty immediately. So that's definitely something to look for. I think you mentioned earlier, like, if you don't feel like you can, really let your guard down and say whatever comes to mind because there's a discomfort in the room, it might be that the clinician is putting up a boundary or a barrier that's inappropriate, that's not allowing you to fully, relax into something. But as far as like symptom relief, symptom reduction, um, be a little bit patient. A lot of therapists and a lot of companies that deal with treating first responders do have, I think it's kind of a sales pitch, like instantaneous accelerated results, like immediate symptom reduction. And I mean, that can happen. There are certain therapies like EMDR, accelerated resolution therapy, that are literally designed to reduce symptoms as quickly as possible. But again, that depends on your nervous system. So if somebody that you work with, for example, says, yeah, I went and did 2 EMDR sessions and like all my trauma's cured, that may be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen exactly for you too. There's all kinds of variables that um, we're not aware of when we're starting this process. So I would say be patient. Um, if it doesn't like feel incredible, like the first time you leave the office, that doesn't mean it's not working. Just give it some time. And um, I would be skeptical of um, shortcuts in my line of work. If somebody can guarantee a shortcut, like it's you know, I think we're way too complex to expect something like that.
Yeah, I think we talk about it on the fairground, like there's shortcuts and tips, tricks, and hacks, and we just want you to, learn the job. Well, it's the same thing with therapy. Like anybody that's going to offer you that solution of hey, this, that, do these three things and you'll feel better immediately. Like that's not exactly how this works. And also, everybody's process is different.
Hmm.
I have a different way of learning than you do, and
Hmm.
what works for me is not going to work for other people. There may be empathy in the path because we're walking it, but my experience is always going to be different than somebody else's. Like it's just so like I what would you say, like 3 to 4 sessions is usually a good measure of just getting comfortable and getting the baseline down and kind of starting to, because like you in 45 minutes you're not going to really be able to unpack all the stuff just to get us to kind of start connecting dots and getting to the healing.
Hmm.
It's that would be I think an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, I would say 3 to 4, maybe 2 to 3. I definitely, like, if you don't feel like comfortable enough by like the third session, I'd say maybe that's an indicator that you might want to shop around again.
Right.
Um, yeah.
100%. What are so like, and this is probably going to be post holidays, but
Hmm.
but like what New Year, New Year's, how like there's I think there's a lot of times there's some stresses and emotions could be bubbling up for individuals this time of year and into the new year. Um, can you speak on that, because I know, like, I don't want to project my own stuff here, but like I see it, like people in the station, people that I just friends, there's a roller coaster of emotions that can happen on during this time of year. What that can we just kind of touch on that, because I think it's definitely something I'm noticing, but
Hmm. You're kind of referring to like just like higher stress around the holidays and stuff like that, or
yeah, like it's maybe like higher stress, and then just like memories, like people are going to be in their own spots, and so like I know for some folks, family is going to, like, the dynamics may have changed, and they could be, this might be our first Christmas without grandma. This may be the moment that we've realized, hey, like maybe things weren't as good as I thought they were when I was a kid,
yeah, yeah.
or
Okay,
just
yeah.
that bad, like, Christmas was always a happy time for me. And then I had this fatal fire on Christmas Eve, and man, it's never been the same.
Hmm.
Or the New Year's Eve drunk driving accident that, like just some of these things that maybe a holiday can trigger
Yeah.
for folks.
Yeah. Well, holidays and anniversaries, they trigger they that's type of stuff gets stored like in the cells of our body, so people can, a month can start approaching and people can start to feel physically different. I mean, we're not just talking about thoughts, we're talking about the entire nervous system, at a cellular level. These things get imprinted and they stick with us, and then when that time comes around again, we can start feeling a certain way. um, I would say if you're not feeling the way you want to feel, you should go talk to somebody, because you should be feeling the way you want to feel, around a certain time. And of course, there's things we can't control, like loss and that type of stuff. That I wouldn't expect anybody to even try to be in a good, pleasant state if there was some sort of loss that happened, tragically or something like that. But
Yeah.
if you were okay, like let's say in November, and now all of a sudden like December rolls around and you start to feel a bit off, that's worth kind of investigating. Um,
Yeah.
so.
I think you said something too that's really, when these anniversaries, holidays, like, and you said that your cells are imprinted with this. So like, just to illustrate this fact for everybody who's a first responder, if you don't think that this is, not that you're doubting that this is a real thing, but to put it in the known to the unknown, think about the cat lady that you go to in the apartment complex who has low mobility issues, and she has like 20 cats in the apartment. And you've got to get her up on a stair chair and get her out from the bathroom. Every one of you who's experienced that call right now can smell it and taste it,
Mhm.
because like the smell of the pet dander and the cats and the litter boxes and all those things not being taken care of is immediately flooding back. Like, like right now I'm in my office and I have a candle burning, but that's all I can smell, because I'm, it's like, this is one of those things that you can just pull like that. The same thing is going to happen with a trauma or a loss, especially in the holidays or that anniversary, is that is imprinted. So like, it will come back, like, or it has the ability to come back. Maybe it will not. I don't want to say like this will happen, but
Yeah.
that's the power of that is really a good illustration of smelling that call, or like a nursing home smells the same no matter where you are in this country.
Right.
I have not been to one that doesn't smell like a
Well, and
nursing
the
home.
and the reason it comes back is because that's what our senses are designed to do. If there's something similar, our senses, it's it, we're going to rely on that information, and our brain wants to make predictions. So, take the example of that call. You smell something similar, or you drive by that same building. Your senses are going to activate that memory so that it can take care of you, so your body can take care of you. I mean, it's an uncomfortable feeling to have like a flashback or like a sensory, memory just come out of nowhere. But the intention of it isn't to punish you. It's actually to, increase awareness that, maybe this is something you should pay attention to, or maybe this is unresolved. So that's another thing to consider.
That's why we don't touch hot stoves, because we did it at one point, and that memory was clearly imprinted that, oh yeah,
Yep.
fire, bad, ow.
Yes. Danger. Yes, exactly.
Jumping back to the conversation on, like, so, new year, new me kind of thing. We're gonna start addressing some of these things. Is there anything else that we should be looking into as far as, or just like to be aware of as we're, we've made this decision, we want to get help?
Mhm.
Anything else that we didn't, I don't want to say that if we didn't cover it, or that you can think of that comes to mind of what you've been hearing from either clients or people in the past who have said, hey, like, I did this and this didn't work out, and I'm trying to figure it out. Like, we're like, because sometimes people think it's me, I'm the problem. I screwed this up, right? Like,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, be careful not to personalize the experience. I have. There's been a number of clients that I've seen who I'm like their third or fourth or fifth, therapist, and they kind of feel broken or like there's something wrong with them. They've tried it a few times and they're not feeling better, and so they make the assumption like, yeah, this must be me. So there's a lot of shame. There's some guilt, personal responsibility that's really unmerited. Um, and so I would say don't be quick to self-judge or self-doubt. Again, it's like it's a unique process, and it's a unique relationship. Um, I think I think the fire service in general, from what I've heard, is doing a better job of, again, normalizing that, hey, there's some things that we can't tackle on our own, and just like we help people in certain ways, there's other people who need to help us in certain ways. So it's getting, I mean, I don't want to make a generalization, but it seems to be getting a little bit more acceptable to go look. Um, but you mentioned childhood earlier, and trauma didn't just start like when you started your career. A
right.
lot of a lot of people on the job have extensive histories of complex cumulative trauma that dates back all the way to the time they were born. And so um, your job might get you in the door, but there might be all kinds of other things that have just been lying dormant um, in your mind and body, but are impacting you daily. So that's another thing is um, you might expect one thing in therapy, and then you might surprise yourself that there's a lot of other things that are going to be uncovered that require healing from back when you were a kid, things that you might not even um, be able to recall with your memory, but your body remembers. And that stuff is probably going to come up if you start to open up some doors.
Yeah, 100%. It's I like to think that we, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Dina Ali was talking about how, like, she's a fire chief, and she was referring to things that we bring into the job with us, and how we're not, able to handle, or not. It's not handle. I'm going to paraphrase this horribly, and Dina, I apologize, but like, we have to be prepared to deal with those employees as they come in with their own traumas, and make them aware that, hey, like, you can have this from your childhood, and it is something that is bubbling around, and then we're gonna take that baggage that we've had, that backpack that we've filled up, and then we're gonna add some more stuff to it, and now they're gonna, this is not a, it's like bringing tequila into a party. It's never a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if you like tequila, God bless you, but so
Yeah.
there's one other thing I was gonna flip back, because I've got my notes here, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss. I think that's yeah, that's it. Whatever it was, it slipped my thought, because I think the guys are outside banging on doors just to bang on stuff. But what else do we got as far as like other things just to kind of be aware of? Is there anything else that we're missing, or that we should kind of touch on, that you're like just like, hey, like we gotta, like I've heard this and we gotta make sure that this doesn't happen.
Yeah. I would say, so if you're gonna look online for a therapist, well, one thing that might be a good idea is if you know anybody who's been to a therapist and they had a good experience, that kind of word of mouth referral, uh, that's not a bad idea to check out. Um, I would say things to look for, like in a profile online, like if you're just Googling, because you mentioned earlier, I think before we got on recording, like Google can just confuse you even more and just, make you really discouraged. Um, I would say look for EMDR therapists. Um, Accelerated resolution therapy is like a new type of EMDR on steroids where um, quicker results apparently. Um, any kind of trauma informed specialty. And there are lots of therapists that predominantly work with first responders. So if you're a first responder, I would say find a therapist that has extensive, experience working with that population because it's not a one size fits all. Every therapist's mind is different. The way they perceive things is different. So if they've done a lot of work, a lot of sitting with first responders, um, I would say your best bet is that they'll be able to help you more than somebody who has no experience working with firefighters.
Right. And so I know Jeff Dill from the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance. He talks like he's usually my first phone call if I've got somebody who's seeking help and we're trying to find a mental health professional, because there's a lot of times where EAP may have been the first stop in somebody's
Mhm.
journey on this, and they're like, yeah, man, I just had this horrible call and all these bad things happened, and now I want to describe them in detail. And next thing you know, um, the representative from EAP is turning green. They've passed out, going on, because this, like, we're being open and honest and we're here, right? But that this person is not ready to hear
Yeah.
the sights and the sounds and the things that we saw. So he talks about like making sure there's somebody who's vetted in that, and that's part of that vetting process. So
Right.
you're looking for EMDR, and what was the second one? It's
Um, Excuse me. Accelerated resolution
accelerate.
therapy,
Okay,
or and just going back to the EAP thing, I don't want to, say anything disparaging about anybody, but when you are relying on a service like that, where it's like this kind of quick fix, and you just get assigned to sit with somebody, I mean, that's no way you want to handle your
right.
health. You just don't. I mean, and sometimes it's just like a necessary, quick, crisis preventative thing. But you want to be able to feel like you're in control of choosing who's going to take care of you. Um, I've heard firefighters say, or paramedics say, when I go on a call, the patient, the victim is in such good hands. Like if they knew that I was going to show up, they would feel immediate relief because I show up and I'm going to give them the best care.
Right.
And I think that you should have that option to choose, not just somebody to sit in a room with, but yeah, I think this person, and then have an opportunity to vet them.
And I think too the other thing is when one of the things that just popped in my head about EAP, and when you approach EAP, if you're sent to EAP from work, and it's like somebody's like, hey, here's a card, you should go talk to somebody, and you're gonna do that. um, Use EAP as your network of, like, it's a more focused Google search, because one thing that I have had success with is walking into EAP and being like, hey, I have this stress going on and I'm upset, whatever it might be. Do you have somebody that you can recommend that I can be
Mm,
speaking with?
mhm.
Because I feel like we're going to cross a line where I don't want to be, and they're always like, hey, like, no, it's okay, I'm here to talk. And I'm like, no, no, no. I want you to know that the stuff that we're going to talk about involves death and dying and the trauma of what I've seen, both in the physical trauma and whatever I'm dealing with. So maybe there's somebody that that has, that can help me. I appreciate your help as well, but like I don't want to gross you out, or and usually that's been like the moment where they've been like, you know what, you're right. Let me get. I'll be right back, and they get a couple, names and numbers of people because they know the lingo, and I've kind of laid out the groundwork of what's I'm
Mm-hmm.
aware of it, but like it's a way that you can kind of use maybe EAP to get you to the next step, so that it's not because that if it's the first resource that you come across, great. And if you are in crisis, it is absolutely better than
Mm-hmm.
nothing at all, maybe. But like
Yes.
this is a way to it's a stopgap to get you to where you need to go.
Yeah. And yeah, you're saying to advocate for yourself, and you
Yeah.
absolutely have the right to do that. Um, you could say, this is what I'm looking for. Do you do this? If they say no, and say, yeah, give me some names of people who do.
Hmm.
Um, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing to advocate for yourself for sure.
All right. So EMDR, accelerated resolution therapy. Can you just kind of hit on that? Because I've heard of EMDR, but not
Mhm.
the accelerated resolution therapy.
So they both use a technique called bilateral stimulation to reduce activity in the threat detection part of the brain. The way they do it is a little different. Um, I'm very, very late to jump on the bandwagon. As far as social media and stuff, I neglect my own Instagram and all that. But I just made a YouTube video that explains bilateral stimulation. So that would be a good idea, a good tutorial it explains exactly what it does to the nervous system, why it works, the science behind it. But essentially, um, when we are reducing activity in the amygdala, the threat detection part of the brain, while we're focusing on a traumatic memory, it allows us to move from feeling to thinking, from overwhelm to logic. And so um, it kind of creates a new pathway out of this negative loop to uh, experience the memory in a way that's much more tolerable. Um, that's kind of the nutshell version of it. EMDR does it. Accelerated resolution therapy has sort of modified the EMDR process, and so they do it in a little bit of a different way. But the bilateral stimulation technique is pretty much the primary tool for both of those types of therapies. And there's some research to suggest that it mimics what goes on during REM sleep or low frequency sleep stages when our brain is moving information from the day into long term memory. Trauma memories get stuck in a loop. That's why they don't get resolved. That's why flashbacks and stuff like that happen. And this technique basically, um, you know, resolves that problem and puts the memory and the information where it belongs in the brain.
So it's almost like having an unorganized desk and being able to file everything away in the correct spot to help us,
Yes.
because that's really what's happening, right? Like we've got so much in front of us, we can't sort it out, but that continuous loop of that trauma
Hmm.
keeps like, so it's like, oh hey, I want to pick up my coffee cup, I want to do this, and then it's like traumatic event, and it
Yeah.
derails, and then we still haven't addressed any of this disorganization over here, which would
Right.
be like normal living, right? It could be just
Hmm.
sleep, eating, physical activity, but it's literally helping us. It's like an organizational expert coming in and being like, okay, first off, we're going to take this coffee cup off your desk because it's gross, uh,
Yeah.
and now we're
Yeah.
going to do this. And then when you're like, but trauma, be like, hold on, we're we're going to get there. And
I like using the example of like a cell phone and iPhone. It
Mhm.
takes the memory from the inbox and it puts it into the archive. So you can retrieve it if you
Okay, yeah.
want. Like if you type in an archived email, you can get it back again if you feel like it, but it's not intruding, without your consent. And that's pretty much what these uh, uh, trauma therapies do is they archive it for you so you can have access to it on your own terms, basically.
Versus ruining family dinner, or
Yeah.
like what I had the one morning when I had the flashback coming back home from work. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, um, very, very good stuff. Awesome. What else? What else do we got? Like, is there anything else that you want to hit on, or
Um, I mean, I'll self promote my book. I think the book has
yeah,
been extremely helpful. It's a very short book. It's under 100 pages, large print, very firefighter friendly. I've had a lot of great feedback about it. And in that book, there are some self-help techniques. If you're not like quite ready to take the plunge to go to someone, or maybe you don't need to yet, there's some grounding and self-regulation techniques that you can do on your own, wherever you are, that just take a few seconds, and they basically create like a systemic relaxation in your nervous system. Those, I would say, that I wouldn't refer to those as shortcuts, but they're definitely like little self-care hacks that can be useful in certain situations when you can't get to a
I was
therapist.
I was just going to say, why is it important for us to have those grounding, those the skills and being able to ground ourselves? Because I think that's one. Like I'd like you just to kind of touch on that real quickly, if you don't mind.
Well, you never know when you're going to be triggered, and we all get triggered. We have good and bad triggers. Trigger isn't a bad word. Trigger
Mhm.
is means signal. Our body will send a signal to our brain to pay attention to something good or bad, right? So if a certain song comes on the radio when you're in the car and it's connected to a really positive memory, you're going to all of a sudden feel that type of energy in your body. If it's a song that reminds you of something tragic, you're going to all of a sudden feel that type of memory in your body. And so you want something at your disposal that's like an easy resource, that's not toxic, that's not harmful to your body, to just be able to do, you know, at your own disposal, just to kind of recalibrate and reset if you get overwhelmed randomly or out of the blue.
Awesome. And then, like I said, and this is fit for off duty.
Yes,
Look forward
fit
to
for off duty. Yeah,
right. Highly recommend this book. Like I said, I've read it myself several times. It's and I've watched it go around the circle of the firehouse. In fact, it's something that like our senior firefighters, if you will, because we're a young department, are giving to our new probationary firefighters to read.
oh, that's awesome.
So it's one of those things where it's becoming a, I call it the library book because it's something that comes out and it's passed around. So
That's
highly
really cool.
recommend that. What do you have coming up for yourself, as far as, is there anything other than the book? Like, do you have any events that you're doing, content that you're putting out there?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna finally getting on the ball to do regular, posting on self-help tips and things related to, like, brief lessons on trauma on YouTube. I have a brand new YouTube channel. And so I'm gonna be posting regularly on YouTube and Instagram. Um, I'm in the process of collaborating with a company that works with first responders, and we're gonna do another book that's gonna be more of a workbook. So rather than information, like, um, kind of like something that you can take with you that actually has exercises and stuff like that as well, which will probably be out sometime next year. So
Awesome. And where can people find you?
yeah, well, my Instagram is at Dr. Peter Salerno. YouTube channel is the same, Dr. Peter Salerno. Um, Books, you could find the books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Um, and then if you want to reach out to me directly, you can, find me on Instagram. You can email me anytime. Like, I love hearing from people. I love hearing that the book was helpful. Um, even we, it's kind of similar in your profession. You don't always get the positive outcome, like results, or like, hey, I'm okay. You
Yeah.
we kind of, that's where we stop the intervention. So it's nice to hear from people that, hey, this really resonated with me, or this helped me a lot. So I genuinely welcome people reaching out to me, contacting me.
Before we wrap up, without mentioning names and obviously the confidentiality, is there a favorite? Has there been an experience from the book that you've been like, yeah, like this one was, like, when I think about it, like, just makes you smile because like they got back and they were like, yeah, like I read the book and this happened, like, and it was pretty profound.
Yeah. I did work with one young man who was just really, really, really hard on himself, and had a lot of issues related to even the quality of he questioned the quality of his performance at work and stuff. Even though he did a great job, he just had a lot of self-doubt. And we did EMDR, and it actually took me by surprise. I think it was like our fourth or fifth session. And when we were saying goodbye, he just turned around and he said, um, I mean this sincerely, that your book and the work we did saved my life. And it was just like,
Yeah.
so, there's nothing better than that. That's incredible.
Well, Peter, thank you for coming on the podcast today and kind of bringing this to light and reaching out, because I think, like I said, I was excited to get you back on and kind of follow up on some of these things. It's always a pleasure to have you on. And like I said, I can't thank you enough. I hope you have a good holiday season and a good 2024. It's, hopefully it doesn't try to compete with 2020 at all, but no.
Yeah.
So thank you. This is Rob, Frontline Mindset with National Fire Radio. Dr. Peter Salerno, check out his book, Fit for Off Duty. It's something that should be in everybody's library as a firefighter. We will see you guys out there. Stay safe until next time.
National Fire Radio.